goes silent when your hand touches the map. A moment ago, they were all talking over each other in 3 different kinds of panic. The old physician blamed the river. The taxman blamed the grain merchants. The military advisor blamed the refugees at the gate. The bishop's man kept insisting the deaths were God's correction, which is a lovely thought right up until the corpses start blocking the street outside your own window. Now none of them are speaking. There are candles everywhere. Too many. The chamber smells like hot wax and bad sleep. The table is buried under ledgers, sketches of wells, burial tallies, ward maps, letters with broken seals. You stand among velvet sleeves and rings of office and clothes that were expensive when they were given to you and still somehow fit like borrowed skin. You move one sheet aside, then another, then the map. The marks are wrong, not the deaths, the pattern. You drag your finger from the riverside quarter to the market, then to the tannery lane, then to the houses near the old cistern. Not outward, downstream, through use, through hands, through buckets, cloth, bowls, mouths. The sickness is not moving like punishment. It is moving like arithmetic. You say so. No one interrupts. You tell them to close the lower well. Burn the cart rags used between wards. Stop the washing line near the cistern. Separate the carriers before dawn. You do not say you know. You say perhaps. You say it may be prudent. You say one might consider. You learned years ago that truth enters a room more easily if it limps. Still, when you finish, every older man there is staring at you as if you've just reached into the invisible and pulled out its bones. And then it hits you. That old, sick thrill. They need your answer. And with it comes the other feeling, the one that always follows now. Once they need you, they stop letting you be merely human. You were not born into silk. You were born into paper. Your father keeps accounts for men whose names matter more than his. He copies figures for shipments, rents, debts, disputes. He is useful, tidy, forgettable. Your mother can read better than she admits in public and worse than she pretends in church. Your house is small, cold in winter, crowded with numbers all year. Ink lives under your father's nails. Wax stubs pile in drawers. Loose pages lie everywhere, half covered in names you cannot pronounce yet, and sums you are not supposed to understand. You understand them anyway. Not one by one. All at once. When you are 5, your father leaves a page of figures on the table and comes back to find you staring at it without blinking. He thinks you have ruined something. He slaps your hand before he sees that you corrected his column in the margin with charcoal. When you are 6, the parish priest asks you to repeat a sermon passage after hearing you mouth the words along with him. You repeat the whole thing, including the part he skipped because his voice caught. He stares at you for so long that your mother later asks if you have done something wicked. When you are 7, you stop asking other children to explain their games. They make rules and then change them because they are bored. Something in you hates that. You prefer knots, pulleys, weather, shadows, the way spilled lentils scatter across the floor in patterns your eyes follow before they even land. People start speaking around you instead of to you. He remembers everything. He counts too quickly. He listens like a clerk. He looks at you strange. You are old before you are tall, not in wisdom, in distance. The world feels delayed. Speech arrives slowly. Mistakes announce themselves the instant they are made. and then you have to sit there politely while everyone else walks toward them like blind men approaching a stair. At first, it feels like power. Then it starts to feel like loneliness with teeth. The priest is the first man to name what you are without naming it. He does not call you blessed. Men say blessed when they mean useful and cannot prove it yet. He calls you promising. Then he keeps you after lessons. Then he tests you in Latin, in logic, in catechism, in memory, in the orderly arrangement of thought. He pushes harder each week, not because he is cruel, but because he has felt the strange sensation of reaching the end of his own road and seeing that you are still walking. One evening, with rain ticking against the leaded windows and the room smelling of wet wool and old bindings, he closes the book and studies you over steepled fingers. You must learn, he says, never to answer as quickly as you can. You think he is correcting your manners. He is not. He is teaching you the first rule that will follow you all your life. Not how to know, how to survive knowing. Do not embarrass older men by being right before they are ready. Do not leap straight to the conclusion. Guide them toward it and let them think they arrived there themselves. Do not sound too certain in matters that smell of doctrine. Do not let delight show on your face when others finally catch up. Above all, never show the full size of your mind on the first attempt. You learn quickly because pain teaches fast. The first time you answer a university visitor too cleanly, too completely, the man goes silent and then spends 10 minutes correcting your posture. The second time, you let him finish his mistake, then ask a softer question and watch gratitude replace resentment in his eyes. That is the day genius becomes performance. At first, the game is almost fun. Hide the blade. Wrap the truth in linen. Let the room keep its dignity. You do not understand yet that every time you make your mind smaller for other people, it leaves a mark. Your first real taste of power comes over grain. A local nobleman's steward has made a mess of the inventories after a wet season and a bad road collapse. Missing carts, spoiled sacks, double-counted reserves. The household is in uproar because everyone knows a shortage becomes theft the moment a superior enters the room. Your father is summoned because he keeps the nearest reliable books. He takes you only because there is no one to leave you with, and because he thinks you can carry pages and keep quiet. You do carry pages. Then you look at them, not at the totals, at the timings, the route lengths, the sequence of entries copied by different hands. You see it almost instantly. Two separate losses are being buried inside one false shortage. One accidental, one deliberate, one caused by rain, one caused by a man selling grain early to a cousin 2 villages away and shifting the numbers to drown it in chaos. You tug your father's sleeve. He hushes you. The steward is sweating through his collar. The nobleman is already angry enough to enjoy ruining someone. Your father, desperate, finally mutters that the boy has noticed something. Every head turns. You are so small your shoes do not make a sound on the floorboards. You walk to the table and point at one line, then another, then the dates. You explain it badly because you are still a child and have not yet learned how much slower words are than thought. It does not matter. By the end, the room understands enough. The steward goes pale. The nobleman starts to smile. No one in that room is looking at you like a child anymore. The feeling that hits you is hot and bright. Not pride exactly. Something more dangerous. The realization that the invisible things binding men together, money, status, fear, fraud, can be handled if you can see the pattern beneath them. The nobleman asks your age, then your name, then whether you have been taught properly. What he means is simpler. Who owns this mind? Soon after, you are lifted, not freed. Lifted. A recommendation here, a sponsor there, a letter sealed with wax more expensive than your father earns in a month. Your family rises on your back by half a step and becomes more careful with every word. You are sent where brighter rooms exist, better instruction, better libraries, better halls where men discuss geometry and blood and canon weight with the same seriousness, as if all truth were something that could be harnessed. The first night you dine in your patron's house, a servant pulls your chair out too late, after the gentlemen are already seated. You stay standing long enough for everyone to notice. A scholar asks you a question in Latin before the soup arrives, not to include you, but to test the quality of what has been purchased. You answer carefully. One man nods, another smirks. No one asks whether you have eaten. You learn more at that dinner than from the entire afternoon's lecture. A patron can raise you without ever admitting you among his own. You discover instruments that feel like extensions of your nerves. Dividers, lenses, astrolabes, imported charts, cabinets of sketches copied from men whose names travel farther than armies. You touch books your father would have crossed himself before opening. You also discover that clothing can shame a body. Speech can betray a class before a thought is even finished. A nobleman may praise your insight and still wave you away with the same hand he uses for a servant. At table, in lecture, in corridors heavy with portraits, you're always aware that your place in the room was chosen by somebody else and can be taken back by the next whim. Still, the access is intoxicating. You start living for that click inside your mind when scattered facts lock together. In the library, in the workshop, in the observatory, in the records room, the world keeps presenting itself as a broken mechanism begging to be understood. Then comes the first door that closes behind you. A court secretary leads you through a narrow passage into a chamber with the shutters barred, though it is still daylight outside. On the table sits a bundle of intercepted letters. A military man you have seen before but never spoken to directly tells you to sit, not in the main chair, at the side. He asks whether you can find patterns in trademarks, repeated phrases, altered spellings. He asks it casually, like a man asking whether you can carve wood. You take one letter, then another. Within minutes, you realize the merchants are passing route changes through devotional language. Grain, salt, and gunpowder hidden inside scripture references. You look up too quickly. The secretary is already watching your face. By sundown, you have mapped the whole code. No one congratulates you. The military man only says, "We require your discretion." Then he slides a purse across the table. More money than your father sees in months. Enough to buy your mother warm boots. Enough to remind you that silence has a wage now. When you leave, the same servant who once ignored you bows. That is the moment the life changes. Not when they admire you. When they pay to keep what you know inside the house. After that, men bring problems to you in private. A magistrate wants to know why tax shortages repeat in the same districts. A physician wants cleaner tallies kept on fever houses. An artillery captain wants numbers on powder waste. A minister wants a merchant network untangled without anyone knowing you saw the books. You are no longer invited to display your mind. You are summoned to apply it. At first, you are a novelty, then a convenience, then an advantage, then something harder to refuse. Servants fetch you at odd hours. Sealed notes appear under your door. You are asked to stay after others leave. Rooms close behind you. Once, halfway through your supper, a page interrupts to say the arsenal requires you immediately. The stew goes cold. You go anyway. Another time, a letter from your father sits unopened on your table for 2 days because a captain has sent for you twice in one afternoon and a physician once after midnight. By the time you break the seal, the news inside is already old. Your mother was ill. She recovered. Your father writes that she asked whether the great house feeds you well. You fold the letter too carefully and hate yourself for the relief. Because being needed is a drug. Because each solved problem opens a better room. Because each better room promises the next. And because for someone like you, access feels too much like oxygen to refuse. You help untangle supply lines for a garrison and discover that efficient hunger is still hunger. You improve a ledger system for hospital stores and learn that clean numbers do not stop men from dying dirty. You decode the rhythm of a merchant network and watch a minister use it to squeeze a rival city without drawing a sword. You point out a flaw in a siege design and hear later that your correction saved a noble son's leg and cost 30 nameless men theirs. This is the second rule of the world, the one no priest teaches. Truth does not attract patronage. Utility does. The men above you love reason the way a butcher loves sharp knives. You begin sleeping less. Your collar rubs your neck raw in summer. Your fingers cramp around the quill. Rich food sits badly in your stomach because you eat it standing up or not at all. You stop visiting home as often. In your father's house, you can no longer speak plainly without sounding proud or false. In your patron's house, you cannot speak plainly at all. So you train yourself into habits. Before you answer, you count one breath. Before you hand over a page, you copy it once. When a servant enters without knocking, you turn your loose notes face down. When a man of rank says, "For your honest opinion," you ask yourself which answer his pride can survive. These habits begin as caution. Soon they become muscle. And because you are young and still half drunk on your own accuracy, you make the mistake every fast mind makes sooner or later. You forget that being correct in private and being correct in public are two different things. It happens in a chamber where a senior scholar, older, decorated, beloved by men who prefer him because he flatters their pace, presents his conclusions on contagion and quarter isolation. You have already seen the data. You already know where his reasoning slips. Not from stupidity, from vanity. He wants a theory elegant enough to survive dinner conversation. He finishes. The room hums with polite approval. Then someone asks your opinion. You should defer. You should soften. You should offer a modest complication and let him save face. Instead, tired and certain and just arrogant enough to believe the truth will protect itself, you correct him. Not rudely. That is the worst part. Calmly, clearly, in 3 linked steps that make his whole structure collapse in front of everyone. Silence. Then the scholar smiles the way a man smiles when he is deciding whether your death should be social or literal. This time, the punishment does not stay in whispers. 3 days later, your key to the restricted library no longer works. A week after that, your place at your patron's table is gone. A servant tells you, eyes lowered, that you will take meals with the secretaries until further notice. Your papers begin arriving already unsealed. One copied manuscript comes back with whole sections crossed out and a note in the margin. Speculative excess. A court official asks lightly, "Who else has seen your work?" The same military man who once paid for your silence now asks whether you have been speaking too freely in learned company. You are not dismissed. That would almost be cleaner. You are reduced. Allowed near the machine, but reminded that the machine has hands. This is the true education, the one no book gives you. Protection is never awarded to intelligence itself, only to intelligence that remains legible, obedient, and placed neatly inside the vanity of greater men. The room you once wanted to enter is finally teaching you the price of entry. So you split long before you have words for the split. Outwardly, you improve. You become patient, measured, strategic. You let fools keep their ceremonies. You present conclusions as options, options as observations, observations as questions. Men begin calling you mature. Inside, you become someone else entirely. You keep second notebooks under floorboards and false covers. You write certain lines in code, not because your ideas are criminal, but because other men's fear will make them so. You move a candle by one finger's width when leaving your room so you can tell whether someone entered while you were gone. You keep one set of pages for your patron's clerks and another for yourself. The public pages are smooth, cautious, obedient. The private ones are sharp enough to draw blood. This is where the loneliness stops being accidental and becomes structural. No one below you has the access. No one above you can afford the full shape of what you know. A woman at court laughs too warmly at one of your careful answers and later sends you a note asking you to walk with her in the garden. You burn it unopened, not because you do not want her, but because you no longer know how to arrive anywhere as one person. By then, you are sleeping with your boots beside the bed and your real work under the mattress. Then the crisis comes, because it always does. A patron city is sick. Supplies are failing. Burial counts are rising. Trade is already trembling. If the right measures are taken now, the city may survive. If the wrong ones are taken for reasons of status, optics, theology, or pride, thousands will die with the ruler's authority right beside them. They summon you at night. That is the room from the beginning, though it feels smaller now that you know what kind of animals sit in it. The bishop's man wants public processions. The physician wants gradual containment so his earlier recommendations are not disgraced. The merchants want the gates half open. The military advisor wants the poor districts sealed from the outside, not because it will work, but because soldiers understand doors. Your collar is too tight. You have not eaten since noon. Wax smoke stings your eyes. Under the table, one of your hands is clenched so hard that your nails cut crescents into your palm. You see the answer almost instantly and hate it for how simple it is. The wealthy quarter has to be subjected to the same restrictions as the river wards. The closed well must stay closed, no matter who drinks from nearby courtyards. Stores must be seized. Routes must be cut. Families with titles must be inconvenienced in the same language used on families without them. In other words, the truth offends power. And you understand what they are really asking for. Not accuracy, permission. A polished justification that lets them save face, preserve rank, and keep the deaths happening somewhere less upholstered. For one thin, terrible moment, you can feel history balancing on your tongue. Say what they want and remain favored. Tell the truth and become memorable for the wrong reason. Hesitate and reveal fear. Speak too directly and become dangerous. Speak too softly and become complicit. This is the cost. Not that your mind can solve the pattern, that it leaves you nowhere to hide once the pattern implicates men who own the room. Your hand shakes over the map. Wax light fractures. The walls seem to lean inward. All the years of concealment, service, performance, ambition, exhaustion, and restraint tighten at once until your own thinking feels like a machine turning against the flesh around it. Then you do what you have trained yourself your whole life to do. You make the truth survivable. Not harmless, not clean. Survivable. You phrase it as prudence, as symmetry, as necessary order. You turn insult into principle. You spread the burden across wards in the language of fairness, so no one man hears accusation in it, though every smart man hears enough. It works. That is the ugliest part. It works. Orders are given. The lower well is closed. The roots are cut. The wealthy protest, then comply when threatened with equal exposure. The deaths slow. Your patron's authority hardens. The city lives, or enough of it does to call the result victory. And the next morning, 2 guards appear outside your study. Not to arrest you. To protect the papers, they say. From that day on, every letter leaving your rooms passes through a secretary first. Your travel is postponed. Your recommendations are praised in council and credited in public to wiser older men. At supper, your patron toasts sound governance and does not say your name once. Everyone understands anyway. You have never been more valuable. You have never been less free. That is the visible scar. The invisible one is worse. In the aftermath, while others thank God, congratulate office, and quietly rewrite their own roles in the salvation, you finally understand what has happened to you. You have become excellent at feeding truth through power without ever letting power feel bitten. You have survived, yes, but you have also crossed a line that does not uncross. After that, the outer life continues the way compromised lives always do. More access, less air, more respect, less innocence. People speak your name with caution now. Some with admiration, some with suspicion, some with that special tone reserved for instruments so sharp they seem almost immoral. You keep working. Of course you do. Men like you do not know how to stop seeing. But the real life happens somewhere else now. In hidden pages. In unfinished systems no patron asked for. In observations too early to publish safely. In locked chests. In the nightly ritual of removing one stack from sight and sliding the other into candlelight. By then, the split is complete. One version of you is visible. Disciplined. Courteous. Unnervingly useful. Difficult to trap in conversation. Impossible to fully read. He knows when to bow, when to pause, when to let a duke feel intelligent, when to phrase a warning as a compliment. He survives rooms by giving them only the portion of himself they can bear. The other version lives after midnight. Restless. Mercilessly observant. Still reaching across gaps the century is too frightened or too clumsy to cross. He writes faster there, with his shoulders finally loose, with the shutters drawn, with the guards outside thinking they are protecting the state from thieves when really they are protecting the state from the full size of your mind. By the end, you are admired more than loved, consulted more than known. People trust your usefulness, not your freedom. They come to you when the numbers rot, when the roads fail, when the bodies rise, when the state wants to see around a corner. And every time you help, you still feel the old thrill. Only now it comes mixed with ash. You once thought being born this way meant having more life than other people. It does not. It means reaching the cost of things earlier. As a child, you wanted to be understood, then recognized, then indispensable, then untouchable. In the end, your ambition shrinks to something colder. How much of your real mind can survive being seen? That is what this century makes of you. Not a hero, not a martyr. A careful architect of your own concealment. The candles burn lower. Outside, the city coughs and groans and keeps itself alive in all the crude, frightened ways cities do. On your table lie 2 stacks of pages. One for them. One for whatever comes after them. You reach for the hidden stack first. Even now, after all the offices, all the summons, all the rooms that went silent when you spoke, some part of you still belongs to the forbidden pleasure that started this whole life. The moment when confusion opens, the pattern reveals itself, and the world briefly becomes intelligible under your hands. Then you hide it, because that is the final shape of your gift. Not that you can know, that you have learned what knowledge costs.